Here to close out the week on ITG with Phil Steele, going to get his thoughts on this big matchup between the Mountaineers, the Utes, and some of the other games in the Big 12 as well here today on the Gun.
You are now watching Believe.
ITG.
With special guest, Phil Steele.
Author of the College Football Bible.
He can see things before they happen. It's a Jedi trait.
All you gotta do is bet on the winner and you'll never lose.
Mountaineer Nation.
You are In the Gun.
Hey, a real pleasure being on. Thanks for having me on the In the Gun podcast.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to In the Gun. I'm Schuyler Callihan. That is Jed Drenning. It is Phil Steele Friday. We're going to get the best in the business here in the building just in a few moments. But before we do, we got some housekeeping to go here with the Big 12 picks that we make every single week. We couldn't get Wes and Owen's picks last night on the preview, so we're going to get that here today. Before we do that, a tip of the hat to those that make this possible.
If you haven't already, please make sure you're subscribed on YouTube to In the Gun and to ITG Clips. That's the best way to catch all our newest Mountaineer content hot off the press. And how about a quick shout out to J.R. Toothman and our friends at Toothman Ford? We all know that cars cost less in Grafton. Plus, let's give some love to Fortis and our good buddy Rick Lewis. For roof performance and financial certainty guaranteed, be sure to visit fortis.us.com. And a tip of the cap to Tim Johnston and his awesome crew at Johnston Equipment off I-79, exit 99 between Weston and Buchanan. And finally, the Book Exchange. For a limited time, when shopping online at bookexchangewv.com, be sure to enter promo code INTHEGUN20, that's 20, for an awesome savings of 20%. That's right, 20%.
All right, Jed, so let's go and get right into it. Our Big 12 picks here. Where do you want to start?
Start with last week's results. Let me grab my notes here. Okay, here we go. Last week, let's start with passing offense. I picked Baylor. They finished fourth. Good enough for 2 points. I earned 2 points. Owen picked West Virginia's rushing offense. West Virginia finished fourth. Still at 182 yards. A lot of it came late against Kansas. So he gets 2 points. And then Wes picked Colorado defensively. Central Florida allowed the fewest in the Big 12 with 9. Colorado only allowed 20, but he didn't place in the top 5. Tough week for those defenses to be picking one. So Wes gets 0 points across the pond in Ireland as he texted us his new pick for the week. You picked TCU's offense, scoring offense. They scored 35. That was good for third place. So you got 3 points. So we're going to roll with this week's picks. I think my passing offense, I'm going to go ahead and go with TCU on the road at Arizona State. I thought about Baylor on the road at Okie State, but I think that TCU Arizona State should be a good game. So I see the Frogs maybe having to throw the football for the full balance of 4 quarters. So that's what I'm thinking. You go and give you your pick, and then we'll let the listeners know what those folks, what Wes and Owen picked.
Yeah, well, we're in the same mind space because I was back and forth between Baylor and TCU. But I'm going to go with the pure situation here. I feel like this is a tough spot for Oklahoma State to be in, of course, with the firing of Mike Gundy. Sawyer Robertson's one of the best quarterbacks in the Big 12, so I feel like they're going to be able to put up a bunch of points. Oklahoma State's defense hasn't been terrible, but I just feel like this is kind of one of those flat spots for them as a team. So I'm going to go with Baylor, and we'll see if I can pick up some more points here.
Okay, so Owen, for his rushing offense, went with BYU, who's on the road at Colorado, to rush for the most yards in the Big 12. And then in the group chat, what did Wes have there? Was it TCU?
Let's see. He has
Houston.
Houston, yeah.
Yeah. So you just talked about Houston. So he has
good
Houston
pick.
Scoring defense. Good pick on his part. So you won the week last week. So I got to gain some ground back on you in those picks. But at the end of the episode now, we'll come back with our prop picks. You didn't win the week last week in the prop picks.
Yeah,
So, okay. At
not
least
a
I
hot
got that.
week. I'm
At
going to
least I
cold
got that.
streak there.
So after Phil, we'll come back and do our prop picks for the week.
Yeah, I'm in a cold streak there. Hopefully, I can get things turned around. So, there you have it, our Big 12 picks. Make sure if you want to take part into this, you can do that. I think it's still pinned on our Twitter account on In the Gun Podcast that you can just go and fill it out. Try to beat each of us every single week and see how you do just for fun. And we're going to go ahead and get to a quick break. On the other side, we'll have Phil Steele get his thoughts on the Mountaineers versus the Utes and several other big matchups.
For nearly 20 years, Fortis has been the nation's leader in providing guaranteed roof performance programs for commercial buildings. Fortis offers roof performance solutions that feature extensive initial and ongoing reconditioning for commercial buildings as an alternative to traditional replacement, with long-term performance guarantees that are backed by global leader Lloyd's of London. Fortis offers a comprehensive range of roof performance management programs that provide financial security, extend the life of our customers' roofs, and make a significant impact on ROI. Fortis is currently improving performance and increasing ROI for customers at more than 4,800 locations, with more than 140 million square feet protected, including many Fortune 500 companies that have turned to Fortis to save money, gain financial certainty, and extend the life of their existing roofs. Fortis has helped customers save more than $520 million in capital roof replacement costs for an average ROI of over 250%. To learn more, visit fortis.us.com. Fortis, roof performance and financial certainty guaranteed.
Nobody supports the blue and gold Mountaineers like Toothman Ford. With over 20 NIL deals and counting, Toothman Ford continues to rally behind our student athletes. And it's time we rally and support the dealer that supports the Mountaineers. Not only does Toothman Ford offer the best prices in the state on pre-owned, their never over MSRP campaign on new Fords guaranteed to save you thousands. Drive with pride all season long, knowing you're supporting the dealer that fuels our Mountaineers. Toothman Ford, where cars cost less, in Grafton and at toothmanford.com.
Back in the gun, and we have the best in the business here with us every single Friday here on In the Gun. It is Phil Steele. Phil, welcome back to the program, and promote anything that you've got going on the site that you want folks to know about.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Once again, you can take the Phil Steele Plus Tour with selections. This week you get 7 selections and 4 quick hitters, all absolutely free. Just go to philsteele.com. It's right there on the front menu. Click on it. It's on the YouTube. And you can take the tour and get yourself 7 free selections and 4 quick hitters for this week's football action.
All right, so let's go ahead and start with, this sounds weird to say still, some Big Ten action with USC going to Illinois. I don't know what's more weird, USC being in the Big Ten or Illinois being this good of a football team in consecutive years. But we've got an interesting matchup here. The Fighting Illini coming off that loss to Indiana. USC rolling into this one 4-0. It looks like they're laying 6 in a hook last I saw. So, Phil, what do you expect here between the Trojans and the Illini?
Well, if you watched last week's game, you have to think that Illinois is a team in trouble. You look at the way that Duke dominated them in the first half at the line of scrimmage, and then Indiana picked up on the same thing. But I'm not going to overreact to this season so far. Had this game been played last week, Illinois would have been a 3-point favorite in the game. Now they're a 6.5-point dog. And then the big thing that I pick up is USC really struggles in these time zone changes. In fact, when they have traveled into the Eastern or the Central time zone, USC is actually 1-13 against the spread. And they did win at Purdue this year, but didn't come close to covering that game. So they struggle when they come across. It's a circle the wagons game for Illinois. And they do have a lot of talent. I think, Luke Altmaier's got a 9-0 ratio this year. He's got the receiving core with Hank Beatty. The defense got gashed last week, but I think they'll play a much better game this week at home. So I'm going to take Illinois plus the points.
You touched on a lot of good points right there, Phil. And jump down to the SEC. You got number 4 LSU on the road against Ole Miss. And one thing you're always guaranteed of, Lane Kiffin and his family are good for content. So this week, the storylines are outside the lines as Lane Kiffin's daughter is dating a linebacker for LSU. So what do you see playing out in a very intriguing matchup? Looks like Ole Miss slightly favored in this one, Phil.
Yeah, and I think when you take a look at
this matchup, first of all, the home team dominates. The home team's won the last five. And if you watch last year's game, Ole Miss never even trailed until the final play of the game when LSU won it in overtime. Ole Miss is playing with legitimate revenge this year. And, you talk about a player that may just take over a job. Trinidad Chambliss for Ole Miss has looked better than Austin Simmons. Simmons had 4 interceptions in the first 2 games. Trinidad Chambliss has come in and looked just phenomenal. He's got a 4.0 ratio, plenty of starting experience. Granted, it was at a Division II school, but Chambliss has looked the part. So I think with him, you've got Lacey at running back, a dangerous receiving core. They're going to put some points up. The home team's dominated the series. And, LSU, when you look at them, you go back to the Florida game. Florida actually had a 23-10 first down edge on them in that one. They did beat Clemson in the opener. We're very impressive in that, but Clemson really hasn't played to the level we thought Clemson would this year. So add it all up with the revenge factor added in. I'm going to take Ole Miss. They're only laying a point.
Phil, I don't want to speak for you here, but this kind of feels like a popcorn game here between Oregon and Penn State. It's a massive matchup. It's probably not a college football playoff eliminator, but it's going to definitely have some implications here. Oregon hasn't been tested so far. Penn State really hasn't been tested either. Different schedules, of course. Oregon playing 2 P4 opponents. Penn State 2 G5s and an FCS. So what do you expect here between the Nittany Lions and the Ducks?
Yeah, you probably hit it on the head, Schuyler. This is one where how do you go against Oregon? How do you go against Penn State? And, the interesting thing is you look at Penn State's schedule and say, that's horrible. You look at Oregon's schedule, you say it's good. But, Oregon has not defeated a team that has won a game over an FBS opponent. Their opponents have 0 wins over FBS teams, Northwestern, Oklahoma State, Oregon State. So while their schedule has been tougher, it hasn't been there. Now, Dante Moore had 2 road starts when he was at UCLA, and he did start at Northwestern, but Northwestern's crowd, that small crowd on the lake there, that's nothing compared to whiteout conditions like he's going to face here, taking on Penn State. He struggled at Oregon State in probably the loudest environment that he had a road start in. And this is going to be definitely a tough start for him here. So I just think when you look at Penn State, I believe the offense with Colton Dickey has been holding some stuff back. I think you're going to see a more explosive offense for him here. And that defense is absolutely dominant, holding opponents to 150 yards per game below their average. So I do think Penn State's a slightly better team. They're at home. I'm going to take Penn State to win the game. But as you mentioned, Schuyler, not a great game to wager on.
What's fascinating there, Phil, of course, as you know, James Franklin, 4-20 all time against top 10 teams. This is one you feel like he has to get. The pressure will start mounting, I think, this early if he doesn't get this one. But here's one that this is why I love talking to you, Phil. I look at this Bama at Georgia game, 2 ranked teams between the hedges. Bama at 2-1, Georgia's still unbeaten. The line's only 3.5 dogs. I would have expected a little more, but you're going to probably explain to me why it's not.
Yeah, I think if we watch the 2 teams this year, Alabama's been the better team. Take away that Florida State game, and they've been absolutely dominant. And I think talent-wise, you've got a Ty Simpson at quarterback sitting 71% with a 9.0 ratio. Also, Alabama has absolutely dominated the series. They're actually 9-1 the last 10 meetings. Now, they haven't come between the hedges in a long time, and Georgia hasn't lost a home game this decade, so they're extremely tough to beat at home. But when I looked at their secondary against Tennessee, they gave up 371 yards, and now they're taking on some explosive receivers like Bernard and Williams and Ty Simpson at quarterback. I think Alabama can exploit that. I actually think Alabama's a better team. So I understand the 3-point home edge for Georgia. You got to give them a home edge, especially with the fact they haven't lost at home. But I think the spread's accurate. And if you're getting over 3 or even 3, a full 3, I can't see Georgia getting much distance on this. So if Georgia wins, I think the most they win by is 3. And it wouldn't surprise me if Alabama pulls the upset.
All right, let's hop over into the Big 12. This is a Friday night kickoff here at 9 p.m. on Fox. It's TCU and Arizona State, a couple of teams that had some very emotional wins last week for different reasons. TCU winning their rivalry game against SMU in the Battle of the Iron Skillet, and then you had Arizona State at the last second getting a game-winning field goal to knock off Baylor in a really good football game. Phil, I know this is a kind of a tough situational spot, but which team can ride the momentum off of last week?
Yeah, and both teams, of course, undefeated in Big 12 play. So this is a one of those games which is going to perhaps determine who's playing in the Big 12 title game. Sam Leavitt hasn't been as good as expected so far. He's got 6 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, even with Jordan Tyson back. Last week I thought they benefited from Baylor turnovers. Baylor turned the ball over 3 times in their own territory. Arizona State had to settle for 3 field goals. I thought the Baylor defense did a good job rising up and overcoming the turnover situation. Thought Baylor might even have been the better team, but it's tough to win when you're -3 in turnovers like that. TCU was actually trailing SMU in the fourth quarter, and then they got 2 big touchdown passes to Eric McAllister, I think a 70 and a 60-yarder, come out with the win. Overall, I've been more impressed with TCU this year, but Arizona State is tough to beat at home. This, to me, is a popcorn game, Schuyler, because I think that this is a pure toss-up game, a coin flip. So if one team was favored by 3 or more, I would love it, but I think Arizona State only a 2.5-point favorite at home. I'm just going to sit back and watch it and learn about these two teams.
Yeah, tough to get to the window there.
Phil, you got a Houston team that's quietly snuck out to a 3-0 start. Willie Fritz doing a really good job down there. They're salty on the defensive side of the football. Offense, they're trying to come around. On the road at Oregon State, yes, they're winless. Difference of a couple touchdowns in this spread. Is there any chance that maybe Houston gets caught looking ahead? They win this football game. Look what that sets up next Saturday night in Houston. A matchup against unbeaten Texas Tech. You talk about a big game. So what do you see unfolding as the Cougars hit the road to take on Oregon State here?
Yeah, and I think the big advantage Houston has for not looking ahead is that they're off a bye. So they're pretty anxious to get back on the field. It's a Friday night game, so you're going to be fired up. Everybody's watching. And, as mentioned last year, Houston had a really good defense. Last year, they held foes to 75 yards per game below their season average. It's actually number 13 in the country, despite the fact they had a losing record. Well, this year, they still have a really good defense. They're holding opponents to 114 yards per game below their average. But now they have an offense. Connor Wegman comes in at QB. He's got a perfect 4-0 ratio. I love the addition of Dean Connors. I thought he was Rice's best player last year, coming over to crosstown rival Houston. He's got 271 yards rushing. So they are a complete team. And with Oregon State, this is the era of the transfer portal. And you've got a team that came into the season thinking, hey, we could do something. Now, granted, they have played one of the toughest schedules out there. I think it's the second toughest schedule. You're talking about Cal, a team with the winning record. Fresno's got a winning record. Texas Tech might be the best team in the Big 12. Oregon is a team that's one of the best teams in the country. So you've got a heck of a schedule they played. But now you're 0-4 and you're struggling, and maybe the portal's calling some of these players. I'm going to call for Houston to go on the road and get this one by a couple of touchdowns. And I am, like you, Jed, really looking forward to that Texas Tech game next week.
You mentioned 114 yards below season average, Houston holding opponents defensively. Do you have where that ranks nationally or not?
It ranks number 24, actually, this year so far.
Okay.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah, there are. What happens in these non-conference games sometimes? You take on some teams that from lower divisions, and it helps your numbers early.
Yeah.
So that's why it's number 24 right now. By the way, Oregon State is number 82 in that category.
Interesting. That should be a decent matchup there. Let's go to Cincinnati going on the road to Kansas. Cincinnati coming off the bye week. Kind of the same situation, or the opposite situation for Kansas this week. They were the rested team going into last week's matchup against the Mountaineers, and those darn Jayhawks had to do what they did coming off that disappointing loss a couple of weeks ago against Missouri. Can Cincinnati go on the road and compete, maybe even win this game in Lawrence?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a really good game. Kansas has the refurbished home stadium. They're excited. They've got Jalen Daniels looking like Jalen Daniels with a 12-2 ratio this year. They're extremely tough to beat at home. However, I'm really bullish on this Cincinnati team this year. It's Satterfield's first year there with Cincinnati, extremely inexperienced team. Last year, very inexperienced team again. This year, he's got an experienced team. They got Brandon Sorsby at QB. He's got an 8-1 ratio. They've got a defense that's holding opponents to 58 yards per game below their average. Tyree Walker is a guy that could really get rolling. He and Pryor are a couple of Big Ten guys at running back that were both VHTs and could really power that run game. They went into Nebraska, and I say it wasn't into Nebraska, but if you watch that crowd, it was going in and facing Nebraska on the road basically, and only lost by 3. I thought they played a really good game, and I think Nebraska might be a step ahead of Kansas at this point. So I think Cincinnati can give Kansas a great game, and I think it's going to be a fun one to watch.
What's interesting about that, after being in Lawrence this past weekend, they were expecting a sellout not last weekend, but this weekend because it's Parents' Week. So they're going to have a big crowd at their disposal this weekend. You got a game, Phil. UCF at 3-0. Talk about surprises. Scott Frost 3-0 on the road at Kansas State. Now, what's strange is they're 6.5 point or so underdogs, and it kind of feels right. Yet, you've talked on this show before, Kansas State really struggling to run the football, and they don't seem that interested in trying to do so. Now they're facing a UCF team that really throttled a struggling Carolina run game. What do you see playing out in the Little Apple? Can UCF go in and make something happen here?
Yeah, and last week I was off base. I thought we'd take UCF, a team with a completely new roster, North Carolina, a team with a completely new roster, and you got Bill Belichick against Scott Frost. I'm going to take North Carolina, and UCF just dominated that game. It wasn't there wasn't a doubt of the outcome from start to finish, and so I was very impressed. Tavon Jackson looks good. Remember, he was originally at Tennessee, then went to Indiana. He's at quality QB, and they were better than expected, but I still think they might be doing it a little bit with smoke and mirrors at this point. And Kansas State, their first 4 games, and we saw it, we've seen it in past years. Look at what happened to Florida State last year if they lost in Ireland. Everybody who loses in Ireland tends to struggle. They come back from that trip. Now there's jet lag and letdown, and they just barely get past North Dakota. They were beating Army 13-0 before the half. Army went for it on 4th and goal at the 2. And got a touchdown on the last play of the half to make it 13-7, or else I think Kansas State might have pulled away. Then the Arizona game last week, it was the first time they had really played in heat like they did, but they struggled. They only had 8 first downs in the game. That was 2 weeks ago. Now they've had a bye. They're refreshed. No longer, I think they've got that Ireland thing hanging over them. They can play football. And, if you play this game at the start of the year, Kansas State's probably, a 14, 17-point favorite in the game. So this is the chance for Kansas State to turn their season around. But they're 0-4 against the spread. So, I'd be careful wagering on them here. But you got to think Kansas State's a better team and at home in a must-win situation.
So we mentioned that Baylor-Arizona State game earlier. Now the Bears are going on the road to take on Oklahoma State, who will be without Mike Gundy for the first time in 21 years. It's going to be weird not seeing him on the sidelines there in Stillwater. And it kind of felt weird all week leading up into that Tulsa game. It just felt like there were some things going on at Sports Center. It's almost like they were expecting this to happen with him playing the I'm a man, I'm 40 thing and everything else. And then all of a sudden – there's the firing, and it happens. So they lose to Tulsa. What do you expect in this game? Can Baylor bounce back from the loss? Does Oklahoma State feel rejuvenated? Maybe thinking this is a restart here. What do you think here?
No, I think it's the opposite for Oklahoma State. Normally there is a coaching bounce, to coaches. I think it goes across all sports. First game with the interim head coach, or they generally play up and are excited. But in the area of the transfer portal, I got to think a lot of these kids are thinking, hey, where am I going to be playing next year? Because I'm not going to be here. And with Baylor, they're off a loss. They have an explosive offense. I'm still waiting for a number 2 running back to emerge, Bryson Washington, the top guy by far, but I haven't seen that number 2 guy. But Sawyer Robertson looks great, 13-3 ratio. I thought they might have been the better team last week, if not for turnovers, against Arizona State. And coming off 2 losses already, they need a big win. And this Oklahoma State team, they were just throttled by Tulsa at home, and that score could have been a lot worse than it was. They got a couple of late scores in the fourth quarter, and if you can't beat Tulsa at home, you're not going to beat Baylor. I got to go with Baylor, and like I said, I think in the transfer portal, you might see Oklahoma State taking a really big turn south.
You got BYU unbeaten, survive and advance. they've made the most probably of a limited schedule, knocked off a struggling Stanford team. They're on the road at Colorado. Colorado has its own problems on both sides of the football, for that matter. Do you think BYU is a little bit of fool's gold? What can they make happen on the road against a struggling Colorado team here?
The bowl game last year was something, wasn't it? I mean, Sataki had his team all fired up because, during the entire bowl week of practices, all folks talked about was Colorado, and they talked about Shadur Sanders, and they talked about Hunter, and they talked about the other Sanders, and they talked about Deion Sanders, and it wasn't even like BYU was playing. We saw BYU just come out and throttle them in that game at 36-14. Now, it won't be the same situation here. Colorado's at home, playing with revenge. They actually played better at home, no doubt about that. The opening game of the season, I like Georgia Tech, and in the first half they got 3 turnovers off of Georgia Tech. Couldn't take advantage of them. Georgia Tech was the much better team in the first half, but only led 13-10 because of the turnovers. But Colorado made a comeback in the second half, actually tied that game. Georgia Tech needed a late touchdown to win. So they can rise up and play good at home. I do think BYU's the better team. Bachmeier now has a road start under his belt, so I think he'll be more proficient this week. And the spread's fairly cheap in this one. So I'm going to go with BYU to go on the road and get the win here.
Phil, Arizona at Iowa State. The Cyclones offense really hasn't been lighting the world on fire just yet. They had a much needed bye week last week after beating Arkansas State 24-16. Arizona, though, on the other hand, I got to admit, I was not expecting them to be sitting at 3-0 coming into this game. They've been one of the surprises to me, at least around the Big 12. I figured without Tetero and McMillan that offense might have a little bit of a step back, but here they are 3-0. Iowa State laying 6.5. What do you think happens here?
Yeah, I think if you take a look at these two teams, first of all, Arizona has had tremendous situations. Hawaii, extremely poor team on the road. Under Timmy Chang, they've only won 2 games on the mainland. And in that game, it was sort of a misleading. Yes, they won the game 40-6, but they were out first down 21-16, only had a 54-yard edge. So the +5 in turnovers was key there. Then they played an FCS team. Naturally, you're going to win that. And then last week, they took on Kansas State at the end of a 4-game grind, the Ireland, and then 3 tough games. And they had the heat factor going for them. So they really were in a favorable situation. Now you look at Iowa State, they've not been in favorable situations. Traveling to go on Ireland to face Kansas State, came out with the win. Then in what you would think would be a letdown situation and jet lag, they beat South Dakota. Then they'd have to take on their rival Iowa. And that's a game where Brett Key told me from Georgia Tech that the Ireland trip really hits you the second week back. They managed to come out with the win. And then after all that, big win over your rival, 4th straight game at Arkansas State, sort of a flat spot. Well, now they're refreshed, ready. Finally, we've got Iowa State in a good situation. We've got Arizona in a first road start in a bad situation. I think the true talent of these two teams is going to show out here. Iowa State's less than a touchdown favorite because of the record right now of Arizona, but I like Iowa State to win this one by a couple of touchdowns.
Well, now for this week's main event, all-time Coach Rod and Kyle Whittingham have a history. Rich actually has a 4-3 edge over him. They faced each other 6 times when Rich was at Arizona and once against Kyle Whittingham's best team, I should say, when Rich was with Michigan. That was his first game, actually. It was against that 13-0 Utah team, his opener in 2008 at Michigan.
Wow.
Last year, you saw Utah sprint out of the gates to a 4-0 start. Then they stumbled and obviously down the stretch never found any answers, winning 5 games. This year they started 4-0. They stumbled against Texas Tech. It looks like the fundamental difference might be you don't have that issue at the quarterback spot that you had last year, that horrible offensive ecosystem with the revolving door at the quarterback spot. You have stability there. So I don't think that's the case this year. But walk us through what West Virginia might hope to do against a salty Utah team looking to rebound from that Texas Tech loss last week.
Yeah, I think you hit it on the head there, Jed, as far as last year's collapse. It was, will Rising play? Will he not play? Will he play? Won't he play? And then at the end of the year, Utah, their last 2 games, they had a 5th-string quarterback starting their final 2 games of the season. So there were reasons for their demise last year. I really don't see it happening this year. In fact, I still think Utah has a great chance of being in the Big 12 title game. Coach Whittingham told me this is the best offensive line he's had in his 21 years. And they are running the ball, averaging 5.5 yards per carry. Wasn't overly impressive last week, but Texas Tech is a really good team, very talented in the defensive front. Defensively, while they gave up 484 yards last week, which is shocking for a Utah defense, a lot of it came in the fourth quarter when Will Hammond was sprung on them. I think they'll be better prepared this week for whichever quarterback West Virginia throws at them. So I think with the banged up offensive line that West Virginia has, they're going to struggle against an angry Utah defense. I still think Utah is one of the best teams in the Big 12, despite the final score last week. Remember, it was 10-10 in the fourth quarter. I got to think Utah comes out of here with the win. Now, the spread's pretty high. It's up to 12.5. Yeah. So, and the thing is, with Rich Rod, he's going to have his team fighting to the very end of the game. I think that Pittsburgh game is going to give him a lot of confidence. Even last week, if you look at it, West Virginia played better at the very end of the game. So they're going to keep fighting. They're going to keep scrapping. But to me, Utah's just the better team. I think they come in here and get the win.
Phil, I know that the schedule is absolutely brutal, especially when you have some of the best teams on deck still to go with Arizona State, Texas Tech at the end of the year for West Virginia. When you look at what happened in Lawrence last week, do you feel that was more of a situation thing that happened there with Kansas being rested, West Virginia off that emotional win, or do you feel like there's some serious concern there? Obviously, the injuries are a big part of this as well for the Mountaineers, but what is your initial takeaway from that first league game for WVU?
Actually, the situation really favored Kansas. And if you look at the game statistically, it wasn't horrible. I mean,
right.
41-10, you would expect 400 to 230 yards or something like that. And the yards were only 64-yard difference. The first downs were close. So I think West Virginia's played so far in this season better than I thought they would so far. But I tell you what, you look at the rest of the schedule, Schuyler, they might be favored against Colorado at home. But there'll be a dog at BYU, a dog at UCF, a dog against TCU at home, a dog at Houston, a dog at Arizona State, and the way Texas Tech's playing, and the way Texas Tech has played against West Virginia in the past, I would say a dog against Texas Tech at home. So might be favored in one game the rest of the year.
Yeah, it's definitely not looking great. Potentially, Jalen Henderson may be playing this week at the majority of the reps at quarterback, and who knows, if he provides a spark, maybe that changes some things in terms of the outlook for WVU. But that's going to do it for Phil. Thank you for joining us again here on ITG. We always appreciate your time each and every single week, giving your thoughts on all these games and, of course, the Mountaineers, Phil.
Yeah, a lot of fun talking football with you guys each week. Appreciate you having me on.
You betcha. And when we get back here on the other side of the break, Jed and I are going to make our prop bets for this week's game between the Mountaineers and the Utes.
When the sun's just rising and the work won't wait, you need the equipment that works just as hard as you do. Johnson Equipment delivers power, performance, and reliability day in, day out. Whether you're plowing fields, hauling loads, or planting the future, our tractors are built to take it and then some. Strong, reliable, ready. 0% financing available for up to 84 months on select models.
Johnson Equipment, farming made easy.
Get all your Mountaineer gear in WVU apparel at the Book Exchange. They're the locally owned and operated retailer with more than 90 years of selling everything you need for game day and everything else you need to show you're the ultimate WVU fan. Shop at their 2 locations at downtown Morgantown or Evansdale on Pattison Drive, or online at bookexchangewv.com.
When shopping online at bookexchangewv.com, be sure to enter code INTHEGUN20 at checkout for an awesome savings of 20%. That's right, 20%.
Back in the gun as we round things out here, as always, with our prop picks. Always great to talk to Phil, get his thoughts on everything going on in college football, especially here in Morgantown. But Jed, we've got to find some momentum here in these prop bets. At least I do. I don't know what you've done, but I've been keeping track of mine. It's been a rough couple of weeks for me after getting out to a decent start. So recap what we did last week, and we'll get into this week's picks.
Yeah, props for Kansas last week. Prop number 1. And out of the gates, this was a tough animal. So over under 20.5 rush attempts for Ty Edwards. Well, considering Ty Edwards spent the balance of the evening next to me on the sidelines, walking around hobbled, I picked under, you picked over, so I think we know how that ended. It was, I didn't think it'd be
I
that far
think
under.
that's one where we go back to the Vegas, sports books, and they say, he didn't play, so the bet washed out. So
That's
maybe,
off. Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Well, the other one, yes, no on a sack for Jamori Robinson.
Yikes.
I said no. You said yes. He did not have a sack, so I got that one. He did force a false start,
Mm-hmm.
and I expect some big things to come from Jamori as he gets settled in and becomes more comfortable in the scheme.
Almost got a hand
And
on the
then,
ball too.
yeah, almost. And then finally, our third prop was because Kansas was such a fast starting offensive team, or scoring team for that matter, averaging 17 and a half points in the first quarter, number 2 in the country going into the game. We asked, would they? And WU had allowed just 3 points in the first quarter through 3 games. Would Kansas score a touchdown in the first quarter? I said yes. You said no. They did. So I went 3 for 3, and you went over 3. But let's wash the Ty Edwards prop out.
Not a
So
good batting average for sure. That's why I was
see
a
if you can
pitcher
swing
only.
around this week. You have an opportunity to swing around this week. We spent a lot of time discussing third down sequences in the preview. Double back and check it out if you haven't already, especially with the Utah offense, how they stay ahead of schedule. It's difficult to knock them off schedule, and their third down success rate through 4 games has been pretty incredible. Of course, a lot of that's driven by the fact they were 14 of 17 on third down in the opener
Yeah.
against UCLA on the road. So through 4 games, they are at 61% success rate offensively. I think this is a challenge that Zach Alley's type of thing he might take personally.
Yeah.
So the question is this: will the Utah offense convert 50% or more on third down against West Virginia?
Mm. I do think he'll take it personally. I do think West Virginia will have success. I still see it hovering right around that's a really good number, Jed. That's a really good number. I'll go slightly over. I just think that offensive line is so damn good, and obviously last week the defense didn't play great against the run, and if that happens to spill into this week, then you got a little bit of trouble. So I'll go with the over here.
We didn't play our best against the run last week, and I do think you're going to face a Utah team that's firmly committed to establishing the run. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah.
But I'm going to go with the under. I'm going to go no. They won't convert more than 50% or more. So I don't think it will be 50%. I'm going to say it's going to be under the 50%. So we diverge on the first prop. Good. The second prop, the thing we talked about was the incredible success of this Utah offense in the red zone.
Mm-hmm.
17 touchdowns and 18 red zone trips. Now, West Virginia, meanwhile, is also having some success in the red zone. 67% touchdown rate. The issue we talked about was what, Schuyler, when it comes to red zone offense against Utah? You don't get there.
You don't get there. You only get 5. Is that how many they've had?
5. In 4 games, 5 times has a team reached the red zone against them.
Mm-hmm.
So here's what we're going to say. West Virginia is averaging 3 red zone trips a game.
I know where this number is.
As we try and sort things out offensively. It might be more simple than you think. I'm just going to say, will West Virginia do what no team has done so far this year and reach the red zone against Utah 3 times?
I will say no. I'm going to keep going with the trend here. Utah's defense is pretty good. West Virginia's offense still trying to figure some things out, but I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing either. Explosive plays are bound to happen, especially if Jalen Henderson's a quarterback or one of these younger guys are at quarterback and you have that mobility piece to it. So I think they get there maybe once or twice, but I think you may also see a score happen with outside the red zone too. So I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. I just think they're not going to let you get down in there and try to make hay. So I want to go no.
It's a challenge. If you go back to last year's 5 straight games that they haven't allowed more than 2 visits to the red zone against them. Uh, I'm going to say it's going to happen. I think the home crowd's going to matter. I think we might force a turnover or two, which we'll get into in question 3 here, but give us a short field to help us out. That's how you get a number like this against a team
Yeah,
like Utah.
you're right.
You can't drive the length of the field and expect to do it. We might get a big play or two beyond what we've been seeing with the addition of the more dynamic run game from the quarterback position in this one. But I also maybe a turnover or two. So I'm going to go yes. I'm going to angle toward yes.
Okay.
West Virginia will do what no team has done this year and reach the red zone 3 times. And as you said, we just saw Texas Tech beat Utah 34-10 with 2 red zone trips. So there are other ways to score, but that's the most direct way. So we diverge again. All right, now let's see if we diverge on question number 3. Interesting breaking down this week. Our boy Devin Dampier. Yes, he's efficient. Yes, he's effective. Yes, he gets the ball out quick. Yes, he's tough to pressure because he knows his quick answer throws when you do pressure him. We talked about he had 12 turnovers, 12 interceptions, I should say, at New Mexico last year and only had 10 turnover-worthy plays, right?
Yeah.
Which is, again, crazy as a metric. Here's the question. Will the defense intercept Devin Dampier? Now, I might be able to talk you into this. He only has 2 interceptions this year. Both came last week against Texas Tech. In the last 2 years, he has 6 multiple interception games.
Wow.
And not to say it's the same situation, but guess who he threw a pick to last year at New Mexico?
I know this. Chase Wilson.
Chase Wilson in a 17-6 loss.
Mm-hmm.
Chase Wilson has seen this Jason Beck offense with Devin Dampier running it. And Colorado State did a good job, better job than anybody last year with Chase Wilson at the point.
Did Coates play him?
Of slowing them down. What's that?
Did Michael Coates see him at Nevada?
I don't think they played. I'd have to check that. I don't think. I know that when Wyoming played them, Braden Siders didn't play in that game.
Ah, okay.
But Chase actually picked him off late to seal the game. Chase had 10 tackles in that game. He played really well against New Mexico. And the fact that he has such a high football IQ and is so dialed in from a game planning and preparation standpoint, I like that he's the leadership presence of this defense as a guy who understands the big picture of what this Utah offense will be trying to do. I'm going to say yes. We force him into an interception. I'd like to see more than one. And they do come in bundles with him. It's all or nothing. It's like in his last 16 starts, he's not been picked off at all 9 times in those 16 starts, but 6 times he's been picked off 2 or more times. So if you can get him off rhythm, you can force him into some poor decisions and force some turnovers. I'm going to say yes, we intercept him.
I think I'm going to go with yes too, because this defense has been in a position to make a lot of turnovers, and they've had a few that's just gone right through their hands. I think of Michael Coates in the Pitt game. He had one right along the sideline, or KK Tarnu in overtime. There was another one. So I feel like Zach Alley's done a really good job of putting his guys in position, and we really didn't see. I don't know how many did Jalen Daniels ever. I mean, he had maybe a couple of errant throws, but did he ever put one in harm's way last week? I don't know.
Well, he overthrew one that kind of sort of could have worked its way into Darian Lewis's area when he was on the run, but not really. None that had the sidelines really leaping up, thinking something was about to happen.
Yeah, so I'll go over. Well, I'll go with he does throw an interception. I just think it's Zach Alley's going to get that defense back to being turnover worthy and finding ways to make it happen.
Here's your answer. New Mexico did not play Nevada last year. They played Nevada 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Devin Dampier, one, wasn't the starter. He was 3 of 6 in that game. But the other part was Jason Beck wasn't the coordinator. Jason Beck was only at New Mexico for 1 year after coming from Syracuse.
Syracuse,
The
yeah.
coordinator at Utah right now. So, yeah, that would be the difference. Again, Braden Siders would have faced them. That was a shootout. Wyoming beat New Mexico, but it was a shootout, like 49-45. But the difference that stuck out to me was that Colorado State game that Chase played in Fort Collins. They really shut them down in a way that, a matter of fact, if you want to look back to see the last time a Jason Beck offense did not have not just a red zone touchdown in a game, but a touchdown at all, it was that game against Colorado State when Chase Wilson played. So Chase Wilson has seen this scheme, understand what it's all about. We had a similar situation with some of our defensive backs who had faced Parker Navarro when they were in the MAC at
Yeah.
Ohio. That didn't work out for us. I'm
Darian
hoping
Lewis.
this is more meaningful. Yeah, Darian Lewis, for that matter, Fred Perry in the bowl game. He
Yeah.
was at
Yeah.
Jack State. So we had multiple defensive backs. That didn't seem to matter as much or be as meaningful. I'm hoping this is. Again, when you just consider the role that Chase Wilson plays in this, I mean, he prepares like a professional. Chase Wilson really does. He prepares like an NFL linebacker. And he's finishing Zach Alley's sentences. So he's the ultimate green dot, the guy making the calls out on the field. And there's a lot to be said for that from a preparation standpoint. So the fact that he was dialed in against this very system and this very quarterback a year ago, we'll see if that matters. I kind of hope it does. I tweeted his interception actually last night as I was going back and watching some stuff. His interception against Devin Dampier. That was one of 4 turnovers New Mexico had in that game. Boy, if you could get something like that going on, because when you stop and look at the games that Rich has had in the past against this not just necessarily this Utah team, but Kyle Whittingham Utah teams in general, his success has typically come, and he has a 4-3 record against these guys, but his success has typically come when his teams have been able to force turnovers, and they've done so multiple times. He had a stretch, for that matter, at Arizona where he won 4 straight against these guys, 2 wins against ranked Utah teams. He had 3 straight 200-yard rushers against Kyle Whittingham's defense at Arizona. But this game,
probably not going to have that.
When you look at where our offense is, trying to find itself, searching for answers, personnel is not perfect fits in every spot. We're injured, we're banged up. We're facing a Utah team returning a ton of talent. The Whittingham versus Rich Rodriguez game this more closely aligns to, I think, was actually the first time Rich ever faced Kyle Whittingham, and that was Rich's first game at Michigan. His opener in 2008 at Michigan, his first game as the head coach for the Wolverines, was against a Utah team that would ultimately go 13-0, beat Alabama in the Sugar Bowl, and finish the season ranked number 2 in the country in the AP poll. So it was the best Utah team in history. That's who Michigan opened with. And Michigan was a work in progress offensively. They had Nick Sheridan and Stephen Threet, 2 guys who didn't fit the offense, splitting reps at quarterback. They didn't have any answers in the run game. They were limited with their weapons on the perimeter. They were trying to sort things out up front. They didn't effectively move the ball. This was an ugly game when they played Utah. Utah ended up winning 25-23. It was much closer than you would think based on what I just told you about how good this Utah team turned out to be. But this game, I think, it has that kind of vibe. Not the games at Arizona and Utah, where Rich was more polished and lightened things up offensively and settled in and comfortable with what they were doing. This is more like that, where you're clawing for every yard.
Yeah,
that's kind of what the situation was in that game at Michigan. And that was a really close, tightly contested game against a very good Utah team. So let's see. There were turnovers in that game as well. So it wouldn't be the first time he's coached a team that was able to steal the football from Utah 2 or 3 times. Let's hope that's the case.
Yeah, got to muck it up and try to drag them into a rock fight. I feel like that's what this team's going to have to do for the most part until they, like you said, find some of those answers on offense and get guys healthy. It's just, I think when you see games at 10-3 at halftime or 10-7 or something like that, I don't think that's the end of the world. If you're a West Virginia fan, you're probably thinking, okay, this is a good spot to be in. So we'll see what happens. Again, kickoff is at 3:30 on Fox this Saturday. It's Hall of Fame weekend, the 1965 throwbacks. Be sure to stop by the Book Exchange. Use your In the Gun 20 code to get 20% off some of that throwback gear and everything else that they have in store there at the physical brick and mortar. And we'll be back Monday to recap this game, and make sure to hit that like and subscribe button here on our YouTube page at In the Gun Podcast. Go back, watch the preview. Jed and I do some breakdown of Jalen Henderson's tape, along with breaking down some of the things to watch from Utah. And then we also have Big O's barbecuing with the beer truck, cooking up some wings. So a lot on your plate this week, and we'll see you back here in a couple of days. And as always, be an ear and tell an ear about your new favorite WVU football podcast. Take care, everybody. You've been In the Gun.
ITG.
The fun doesn't have to stop here.
Be sure to hit subscribe and never miss an episode.
If you have any questions, suggestions, or feedback,
be sure to follow us on X at In the Gun Podcast.
Join us again next time.
Until then,
tell an ear to tell an ear about your new favorite WVU football podcast.
This mission is over. It's over.